It started with a hole in the ground. Not just any hole, but one that hadn't been there the day before. The first time we saw it, the sunlight barely kissed its edges. A black mouth, gaping in the red dirt, at the far edge of our remote dig site in the Peruvian Andes. Our expedition had been focused on ancient burial grounds, hoping to uncover clues about pre-Incan civilizations. But this wasn't part of the mapped terrain.
Deole wasn't natural.
The edges were unnaturally smooth. Too precise. As if someone, had carved it out with intention. I remember how Dr. Fraser stood over it in silence for a full minute, jaw clenched, his wide-rimmed hat shading his furrowed brow. "We'll descend tomorrow," he said finally. "This might be what we've been looking for." I should have left then. I should have packed my gear and radioed for the helicopter. But curiosity, dangerous, addictive curiosity, kept me rooted. There were 5 of us: Dr. Edward Fraser, the lead archaeologist and founder of the expedition; Carla, the head linguist; Marcus, the young but overqualified spelunker and cave mapper; Sam, our quiet geologist; and me, Daniel, record keeper and videographer. I was there to document every step, every find, and every grim discovery we didn't yet know waited for us. That night, the wind blew strangely warm across the plateau. Tents rustled in gusts that carried no chill, only the heavy scent of damp earth. I woke twice to what sounded like breathing outside my tent, low and labored, not quite human. I told myself it was the wind through the rocks. But I didn't sleep again. At sunrise, we gathered at the hole. Fraser had ropes and harnesses ready. Marcus was already suited up, excitement dancing in his eyes. He shone his headlamp into the abyss. "No bottom in sight," he said, adjusting the rope.
"I'll go first. Sicura landing zone."
"If it's too unstable, I'll come back up." "You're sure?" Fraser asked.
Marcus gave a confident nod.
"Caves are my second home." We watched as he descended, the rope slackening inch by inch. It took 10 minutes before his voice crackled through the radio.
"Touchdown."
"It's massive down here."
"Dry. Smooth walls."
"Almost like architecture." My stomach tightened. One by one, we descended. I went third.
As he slipped below the lip of Deole, the world above it disappeared like a dream fading on waking.
The temperature dropped instantly, as if I had stepped into a cold-blooded lung. The air felt thick.
Old.
Not just stale, but heavy with something unspoken, as if the tunnel itself held breath. The chamber below was impossible to describe. Smooth obsidian-like walls curved outward in unnatural symmetry. There was no visible source of light, yet a faint glow pulsed through the floor like veins under translucent skin. It was completely silent, so much so that our own footsteps echoed too long, too loud. "This wasn't made by any civilization we know of," Sam murmured, brushing his fingers along the wall. "This isn't even stone." Fraser was already mapping out the passageways, trailing the glow like a bloodhound. The deeper we moved, the more wrong everything felt. Carla noted the symbols etched into the walls, glyphs that defied her linguistic expertise. "They shift when I'm not looking at them," she whispered. I didn't respond. I was too focused on the shapes that darted just beyond the glow, shadows that didn't belong to us. We made camp in the central chamber, a hollow sphere of impossibly round perfection. We called it the Heart. From there, several tunnels branched off, spiraling deeper. No one dared explore them that night. That first night below, none of us slept. The floor of the chamber vibrated subtly, like a heartbeat echoing from deep within the earth. Every now and then, a low rumble passed through us, followed by faint whispers none of us could translate. It wasn't language, it was sensation.
Something brushing the base of the spine. Something primal.
In the morning, or what we assumed was morning, based on our watches, Marcus was missing. We found him at the mouth of the southern tunnel, kneeling, naked, his gear piled neatly beside him. He was humming a tune none of us recognized, his eyes rolled back into his skull.
"Marcus!"
I called. He didn't respond. Fraser approached slowly and placed a hand on his shoulder. The instant he made contact, Marcus let out a shriek that shattered the silence like glass. It wasn't pain. It was ecstasy. He turned to face us. His eyes were jet black. "We must go deeper," he said, his voice layered with something else. Something that didn't belong to him. Fraser tried to restrain him, but Marcus twisted away with unnatural speed and vanished down the southern tunnel. We called for him. We waited. We debated going after him.
Frazier made the call.
We follow. If he's in trouble, we can't leave him. I don't think he's Marcus anymore, Carla said under her breath. We packed what gear we could carry and followed the tunnel down. The walls narrowed and twisted like the inside of a beast's throat. There was no breeze. No sound.
Only the constant throb of unseen energy.
The tunnel spat us into another chamber, this one angular and alien. Carved spires jutted from the floor and ceiling, forming jagged patterns too deliberate to be random, but too chaotic to make sense. There was Marcus, standing in the center, arms raised, face lifted toward a swirling mass of darkness above. It spun like smoke and shadow, murmuring in tongues older than thought. Glyphs on the wall pulsed with every beat of its cadence. Fraser approached slowly.
Marcus.
We need to leave. Marcus smiled. It already knows you. It called you here. Then the mass descended. Not quickly.
Not like a monster pouncing.
It flowed. Like ink across paper. Like thought across synapses.
It touched Marcus first.
He didn't scream. He dissolved. Not physically, at least, not at first. He simply changed.
Skin warped. Limbs bent backward.
Mouth opened too wide, revealing teeth like wet glass. And yet he smiled the whole time, as if his body unraveling was the greatest thing he'd ever experienced. We ran.
Through the tunnel. Back toward the art.
But the walls were different now.
Alive.
Breathing.
The floor pulsed faster.
The glyphs screamed. Carla collapsed mid-run, hands over her ears.
He dragged there.
Sam carried the gear. Fraser kept muttering to himself. They called us. They called us.
They knew we'd come.
We reached the heart and sealed the entrance to the southern tunnel with what equipment we had. But it wouldn't hold. Whatever had changed Marcus would find its way through.
Frazier sat against the wall, scribbling madly in his notebook.
Every layer reveals another truth, he whispered. Every descent is a shedding.
What the hell are you talking about?
I snapped. He looked at me with eyes that weren't entirely his.
The deeper we go, the less of Stati Uniti remains.
That was the first night Carla's eyes started bleeding. She said it didn't hurt. Said she could see now. I didn't sleep. None of us did. Something was moving through the lower chambers. Something no longer bound by flesh. Tomorrow, Fraser says we go deeper. Says it's the only way to understand. To become. I don't think he realizes, we already are. We're already changing. And it's not done with us yet. Fraser didn't sleep. He just sat there, scribbling pages of symbols that looked eerily like the shifting glyphs from the walls, glyphs Carla said kept whispering her name. I watched him with unease. His face had grown paler, stretched thinner. The skin under his eyes was bruised with purple rings, and his fingers twitched in short, unnatural bursts, like something inside him was trying to break free through his skin. Carla was no better. Her bleeding eyes had crusted over with black. She claimed she didn't need them anymore. Said she could feel the structure breathing, pulsing, moving with us. She said it knew our names. That it was mapping us the same way we had tried to map it. I wanted to go back up the rope. But it was gone. Not cut. Not snapped. Just gone. The smooth shaft we had descended now extended endlessly upward, walls perfectly round and slick like glass, offering no grip. Even Marcus's climbing gear was missing. There was no breeze, no sound, no echo. Just that terrible stillness, like the void itself was listening. We were invited, Fraser said calmly as he packed his things. It won't let us leave. Not yet. Then we find another way out, I said. We search the other tunnels.
We don't follow Marcus. We don't go deeper.
Sam, who had been silent all morning, finally spoke. This place isn't about direction. It's about transformation. He was right. I just didn't understand what he meant until later. We headed into the eastern tunnel next. Carla said the walls here whispered softer. Not safer, just more patient. The glyphs here weren't as jagged. They spiraled gently, like a lullaby carved into stone. The floor sloped downward at an impossible angle, but none of us struggled to walk it. It was as if gravity bent with us, welcoming us. We passed structures that resembled shrines, or maybe feeding stations. Stone altars, hollowed basins, metal tools rusted with centuries of use. And blood.
Always blood.
Stains that refused to dry. Red-black pools that shimmered without light. Carla knelt at one of the glyph-covered walls and pressed her fingers against the carvings. She trembled. Whispered. "It's feeding," she said.
It learns through asterisco Stati Uniti asterisco.
Through pain. She began scraping her arm against the stone. I lunged to stop her, but Sam held me back. "She's becoming what it wants," he said.
It's only a matter of time.
I should have fought harder. But I didn't. Because part of me wanted to know what she saw. We continued deeper. Hours passed.
Days. Maybe.
Our watches died one by one. The tunnel's glow began to shift from faint white to dull amber, like ancient candlelight. Warm. Too warm. Like something breathing hot against our necks. Eventually, we reached another chamber. But this one wasn't like the heart. It was far worse. This room pulsed with sound.
Not like music, more like a heartbeat filtered through broken glass.
The walls here were not stone, they were flesh. Veined, slick, covered in translucent layers that moved when we did. The floor squished under our boots. It didn't smell like rot. It smelled like birth, wet and metallic and primal. In the center of the room stood a figure. It was Marcus. Or, what used to be Marcus. He was taller now. Skin pulled too tight across elongated limbs. His face had no eyes, just smooth skin where sockets should have been. A thin vertical mouth opened slowly, revealing a spiral of teeth that clicked like dry leaves in the wind. "You came," it said in his voice, but layered, like multiple people speaking in unison. Fraser stepped forward, eyes wide.
"You understand now."
"You've transcended." "Yes," it said.
"And now, so will you."
I screamed for Fraser to stop, but he dropped his pack and knelt before the creature. It reached out a twisted arm and touched his head, and the moment it did, Fraser began to shake. Violently. Blood poured from his ears, eyes, nose. He screamed, not in pain, but in rapture. Carla knelt beside him, clutching her bleeding eyes. "It's showing us. It's showing us everything." Fraser collapsed, body spasming. His skin split down the middle, like a cocoon tearing open. From within, something slithered out, wet and glistening, featureless but humanoid in shape. It didn't even hesitate. It stood, fully formed, and looked at me. Its face wore Fraser's smile. Sam turned and ran. I grabbed Carla's arm and followed. We sprinted back through the tunnel, only to find it had changed. No longer a corridor, it had become a twisting spiral, a Mobius loop of flesh and stone. We ran for what felt like hours, the walls tightening, the ceiling dripping fluid that hissed on contact with our skin. Eventually, we emerged into another chamber, this one dry, lined with brittle bones. Thousands of them. Human, mostly. Some weren't. Some had too many ribs. Some had no skulls. Some had too many jaws. Carla collapsed beside a pile, whispering nonsense, laughing and crying at once. Sam stood in the center, arms outstretched. "It's in us now," he said. "The place.
De asterisco fing asterisco.
It's learning us." His skin began to bubble. Not like infection, like molten wax. His bones cracked audibly as they reshaped. He screamed, briefly, then sighed as his jaw unhinged and fell open like a serpent. I couldn't take it anymore. I ran.
He left Carla behind.
I left Sam. I didn't even feel shame.
Just terror. Raw and all-consuming. The halls blurred around me. Time fractured.
I saw flashes of rooms I hadn't entered, of memories I hadn't lived.
A child drowning in ink.
A woman with no face singing to a pit.
A city made of screaming mouths. Somewhere, deep inside, I heard my mother's voice calling my name.
Then my own voice answering in a language I didn't know. Finally, I collapsed.
When he woke, he was back in the art.
Alone. The chamber was quiet again.
The floor pulsed slowly, like a resting heartbeat.
Gone to emerge from the tunnels.
Frazier, Marcus, Sam.
Dozens more. Not as they were, but as they had become.
All smiling. All watching me with eyeless faces.
I turned and ran, but the entrance to the shaft was sealed.
Just wall now.
Like it had never existed.
No way out.
They surrounded me. And then...
Darkness. Trattino, trattino.
When I woke again, I was lying in my tent. Outside, the wind was still. The sun was rising over the Andes. Everything was normal. Fraser's tent was zipped shut. Carla was boiling water for coffee. Marcus was checking the ropes. Sam was sketching. As if none of it had happened. As if we had never gone down the hole. I rushed to the shaft. It was gone. Nothing but dirt and rocks. No sign it had ever existed. But my arms were covered in thin scars. Symbols I didn't remember carving. Glyphs.
He said nothing.
But I knew.
We'd gone deep.
Too deep. And something had followed us back. Something wearing our skins. Something that remembered the dark. Something that hadn't finished yet. The morning sun rose over the Andean cliffs, casting a golden light that should have warmed me, but I felt no heat. My skin prickled with a cold sweat, as if the mountain air had lost its purity. Everything looked the same. The tents, the equipment, even the humming of the generator we'd set up. But it was all wrong, like a replica made by someone who had only seen human life through a crack in a wall. Fraser was humming softly as he catalogued artifacts that hadn't been uncovered before the descent. But his handwriting wasn't the same, sharper now, angled in a way that reminded me of the glyphs etched into the underground walls. He looked up and smiled at me, and I swore his teeth were too many. "Sleep well?" he asked. I lied and nodded. Carla seemed normal too. Her eyes no longer bled, and she offered me coffee like nothing had happened. But when she turned to speak with Sam, I noticed the way her lips moved, like she was repeating after something else just half a second ahead of her. Like she wasn't in control of her own timing anymore. I didn't see Marcus at first. When I finally did, he was sitting just at the tree line, watching the clouds roll across the valley. Still, unblinking. He didn't acknowledge me when I approached. "Marcus," I said. He turned slowly. The way his head pivoted wasn't natural. No shoulder movement, no hesitation. Just a rotation, like his spine was a metal rod. "You stayed behind," he said. "What?"
In the deep.
"You didn't finish. But you brought it back." I took a step back, my throat dry. "What did I bring back?" He smiled. "The echo." I didn't speak again. I didn't need to. I knew. Something was inside me.
Not a parasite. Not a ghost. Something older.
A seed, planted when I fell unconscious in that chamber.
Something waiting for darkness, for silence, to bloom.
Later that day, I searched my body. The glyphs weren't just on my arms now. They were spreading. Faint, but present, across my chest, down my back, like something beneath the skin was trying to etch its way out. And the dreams returned. Every night, I woke choking, drenched in sweat, with the taste of stone and blood in my mouth. I saw the spiral halls, the chanting figures, the void that opened beneath Marcus. But worse were the mirrors. In the dreams, I would stand before reflections that didn't copy me. That stared back with smiles, twitching fingers, heads tilting at unnatural angles. On the third night after we returned, I caught Carla speaking to the fire. Not in English. Not in any language I knew. But I recognized it, because I had heard it before.
From the asterisco walls asterisco.
She wasn't alone, either. Fraser was beside her. So was Sam. They chanted in rhythm, glyphs glowing faintly beneath their skin. I stayed hidden behind the equipment crates, filming. My hands shook, but I needed proof. I needed to remind myself this wasn't another dream. As they chanted, something stirred in the air. The wind stopped. The stars above shimmered and bent inward, like they were being pulled into a hole I couldn't see. The fire didn't flicker, it froze. Perfectly still, like a photograph.
No sound, no breath, No time.
Then they turned in unison, toward me. I ran. Through the dark, over rock and root, until my lungs burned. I didn't stop until I reached the comms tent.
Ettore opened the radio box and flipped the emergency signal onorevole.
Static.
Nothing but static. He screamed into the mic. Over and over. This is Daniel.
This is an emergency.
Do you copy?
Anyone, please. No response. Just as I was about to give up, the static shifted. A voice. But it wasn't coming through the radio, it was coming from behind me. I turned slowly.
Marcus stood in the doorway.
You can't escape this, he said calmly.
You were chosen. Just like Stati Uniti.
I didn't choose any of this, I snapped. You didn't have to.
The plus cose for you.
He stepped into the tent. His skin twitched, bulging as if something beneath it was trying to claw its way out. His eyes had no whites anymore.
Just inky black, like bottomless wells.
You can still fight it, he said. But not alone. He handed me a small, curved shard of obsidian. The same material the underground walls had been made of. It hummed in my palm, vibrating with an ancient energy. Use this when it calls again, he whispered.
Before you forget who you are.
Then he vanished into the dark.
Trattino.
The next day, the others acted like nothing had happened.
No mention of the fire.
No mention of the chanting.
No mention of Marcus.
When I asked about him, Carla just smiled. Marcus hasn't been with us for days. But I saw him. Maybe you dreamed it, Fraser said. This altitude messes with people.
He knew then.
They weren't them anymore. Whatever came back with us was wearing their faces, living in their bodies. And I was next. That night, I left the tent and walked to the edge of the cliffs.
The stars above swirled.
The ground pulsed faintly beneath my boots, like something enormous was breathing just beneath the crust of the earth.
And then Uno heard it again. The voice.
But this time, it wasn't outside me. It was inside. It didn't speak words.
It pulsed emotions, hunger, understanding, asterisco welcome asterisco.
It whispered of truths buried below, of shapes that once ruled the sky and now slumbered in stone. It told me I was a vessel, that I was being prepared. I clutched the shard Marcus had given me.
It pulsed against my skin.
Warmer now.
Almost alive.
I pressed it against my palm until it broke skin, until blood dripped from my fingers and pooled in the dirt. The whispers paused. Then they screamed. The sky tore open, not literally, but in my mind. I saw what waited below.
I saw the asterisco city asterisco. I saw the ancient doors.
And I saw what slept behind them, shapeless, infinite, a god that had forgotten its own form.
I blacked out. Trattino.
When I woke, I was inside a stone room. Not a tent. Not a hospital.
So black.
Smooth. Faint glyphs glowed on the walls.
A voice echoed through the chamber. You called Stati Uniti.
I stood, every part of me trembling. The chamber didn't seem to have doors. It wasn't just underground, it was beneath time. I wasn't in the Andes anymore. I wasn't even human anymore. My reflection appeared on the wall, my face twisted, my limbs elongated. My mouth whispered things I didn't understand. The voice returned. You are becoming. And I understood. We hadn't escaped the underground.
We never asterisco left asterisco.
That day we first descended into the shaft, something broke. Something entered us. The surface world, the tents, the sunshine, it was all a veil. A comfort. But now the veil was gone. I had finally reached the next layer.
The final truth.
There is no up. There is only down.
And the deeper you go,
the less human you become. There was no telling how long I'd been down there. Time had lost all meaning. There were no clocks, no sunrises, no sleeping or waking, just a constant awareness, stretched thin and vibrating like an insect's wings. The chamber I found myself in pulsed faintly with life.
Not light. Asterisco life asterisco.
The walls had veins. Sometimes they twitched.
The floor beneath me throbbed slowly, like a pulse from something buried beneath.
And in the stillness, I realized something terrible. This place wasn't built. It was grown.
I staggered to my feet, every joint aching. My skin felt wrong, too tight, too warm.
I looked down and saw faint glyphs crawling just beneath the surface, shifting slowly, like they were trying to find the right place to settle. I wasn't sure if I was still me, but I was still aware, and that meant I hadn't fully lost myself. Not yet. I stumbled toward one of the walls and pressed my hand against it. It gave, slightly, like flesh, and opened like a sphincter, revealing a tunnel beyond. The passage ahead was dark and slick, but it invited me, like it had been waiting for my touch. I had no better option, so I stepped in.
Trattino. The tunnel twisted downward, impossible to map.
It branched and reconnected, like a nervous system, pulsing in sync with some unknowable heartbeat.
Sometimes I heard whispers.
Sometimes I heard screaming. Sometimes I heard my own voice, coming from tunnels I hadn't entered. It was learning me.
Feeding on my memories.
At one point, I passed a room filled with faces pressed into the wall, hundreds of them, eyes wide and mouths open in silent horror. Their expressions weren't frozen, they moved. As I passed, their mouths whispered things I had forgotten from childhood. A nursery rhyme.
The name of my first pet.
A lie I told my mother when I was 6.
It knew everything. Then he saw Marcus again.
He stood at the center of a wide chamber, surrounded by spires that looked like bone. He wasn't twisted or monstrous now. He looked almost like his old self. Calm. Serene. Welcome to the city, he said.
He stepped closer.
Where are we? The truth, he answered.
The place beneath asterisco l'asterisco plus.
Before us.
Before time. Before flesh. This is what the earth forgo.
He gestured around the chamber. There were structures, archways, towers, vaults, all grown from the same living stone, breathing in sync. Everything glowed with that same soft pulse, like the city itself was asleep and dreaming. What is this place? I asked. A nursery, he replied. For gods. I stared at him. Gods. Not gods like we imagined. These things were never meant to be worshipped. They're too old for that. Too vast.
Too unfinished.
They were buried here by something else. Something even older. And we, humans, we were never meant to find them. But we did. And now they're waking up, through us.
He stepped back, shaking my head.
I didn't ask for this. You didn't have to. Curiosity was the key. You opened the door just by wondering.
And now it knows you. What asterisco is asterisco it?
I whispered. Marcus tilted his head toward the ceiling. Above us, far in the dark, something vast moved.
A shape with too many angles, too many limbs.
Its presence pressed against my mind like a weight. It has no name, Marcus said. But it used to have a form. A purpose. It ruled before breath. Before bone. And it wants to rule again. But first, it needs vessels.
So it waits, deep underground, inside our dreams, feeding on our fears, until we're ready. Ready for what?
He smiled.
To shed what we are. Trattino.
I left him there. I couldn't listen anymore. Every word he spoke pressed too close to my thoughts. I didn't want to understand, because if I understood, I might accept. And I wasn't ready for that.
He wandered through the city.
Through halls with no gravity. Through chambers that changed shape behind me. I saw statues that moved when I blinked, doorways that bled, staircases that whispered regrets in my own voice.
He saw Carla again.
She was lying in a shallow pool of ink-black liquid. Her body was split open down the middle, but instead of blood, glyphs poured out, written in strands, like threads. As I approached, her head turned toward me. I never stopped seeing, she whispered. Even when the eyes were gone. She raised her hand and pointed behind me. I turned, and saw the cathedral. It stood at the city center, taller than anything else, built from fused bones and black stone. The top reached into darkness. The doors were sealed by a single glyph, pulsing like a heartbeat. And I knew, whatever slept behind that door, was awake now.
Trattino. I don't remember walking inside.
1 second I stood before it. The next, I was within. The cathedral was hollow and endless. Every wall was a mirror, but not of glass. Of memory.
I saw flashes of my life.
My parents.
My childhood home.
My dog.
All twisted.
The dog had 2 mouths. My parents bled from their eyes. The wallpaper in my room spelled out glyphs I now recognized. The cathedral showed me what I was.
What the asterisco used asterisco to be.
And what I was becoming. I reached the altar. And there it stood. A figure. Not Marcus. Not Carla. Not any of the others. It looked like me. But taller. Emaciated. Pale and slick and twitching with every breath. It smiled. "You finally see," it said.
No, he whispered.
"This isn't me. But it will be." It raised its hand and stepped closer. "I don't want this."
You don't have a choice.
"You never did."
You went deeper. And now the layers peel away. You see what lies beneath the flesh. Please, let me go. You asterisco are asterisco gone.
All that's left is what's waiting to be born.
Trattino trattino.
The glyph on the altar glowed. My skin burned. The glyphs across my body lit up, brighter than before.
He screamed, falling to my knees. My veins cracked. My tufts split.
And then, the shard. I remembered the obsidian shard Marcus had given me. I reached into my pocket. Somehow it was still there.
It pulsed in my hand, hot, screaming.
I raised it and stabbed it into my chest. Pain. White hot. Blinding. Everything went still. The cathedral vanished. The city crumbled. The figure before me let out a shriek that shattered the void. And I fell, upward.
Trattino trattino. He woke gasping on the dirt.
Sunlight.
Real sunlight.
Cold wind. My own body. I was back. The shaft behind me was sealed, just rock and grass.
No sign it ever existed.
The tents were gone.
The camp abandoned.
I was alone. I don't know how much time had passed. Weeks. Months.
I made my way down the mountain. Found a small village.
Told them I got lost during an expedition. They didn't ask questions. I didn't offer any. But I haven't been able to sleep since.
Because every time I close my eyes, I see the city again. I hear the chanting.
I feel the glyphs burning. And worse.
Sometimes, when I wake up,
I'm still glowing. We descended into blackness. The tunnel was no longer rock and stone. It pulsed. The walls throbbed like muscle, slick with moisture that dripped down in irregular patterns, mimicking the rhythm of a heartbeat.
We weren't walking anymore.
We were crawling inside something.
A living thing.
Every inch forward felt like we were being swallowed whole. I heard breathing. Not mine.
Not Charlie S.
Not the others.
Something much deeper, slower, like mountains inhaling.
It came from all directions, the sound wrapping around us like a noose. Charlie was silent now, wide-eyed and pale, his lips constantly mouthing words I couldn't hear. Marcus had started bleeding from the ears.
Sarah's hands trembled uncontrollably.
Our oxygen tanks had long been depleted. But we were still breathing somehow. Or at least we thought we were. I wasn't even sure my chest was rising anymore. And then the tunnel opened. We spilled into a cavern so massive it made me weep. Not from awe. No, there was no awe left in me.
Just despair.
The cavern didn't feel underground. It felt beneath existence. The ceiling was lost in a swirling void of stars, like a corrupted sky frozen in decay. Glowing strands of fleshy tendrils dangled like sick chandeliers, writhing gently as if stirred by some unseen current. In the center stood a structure. It resembled an altar, but it was made of bone and teeth, some human, some not. A colossal shape towered behind it, a thing without form, always shifting. Sometimes it looked like a man, other times like a mass of mouths and limbs. At one point it resembled a fetus made entirely of screaming faces. I couldn't look directly at it, and when I did, I could feel memories being torn from me. It whispered names I didn't recognize, but that made my stomach twist in recognition. Then it spoke, inside us.
Asterisco you come here for truth. Asterisco.
The voice wasn't sound. It was sensation. It was every trauma I'd ever experienced poured back into me at once. I saw my mother's death again, smelled the fire from my childhood home, heard the crunch of bones beneath the wheels of the truck I crashed a decade ago. All at once. Asterisk, you sought understanding. You are now part of it. Asterisk. Sarah collapsed. Her eyes were white.
No pupils, no irises.
Just milky voids. She whispered something over and over again. He waits in the hollow. Her voice didn't match her mouth. She sounded older. Or perhaps never born. Marcus stood still, then began to smile. He reached down and tore his own stomach open.
No scream. No hesitation.
Inside him, where guts should have been, there was only dust. He fell backward and dissolved before he hit the ground.
Charlie started laughing.
It was high-pitched and broken. He clawed at his skin as if trying to tear something out. "It's in me," he screamed. "It's using my voice." He turned and ran back into the tunnel we'd come from, but it wasn't there anymore. The opening had sealed shut, flesh puckered over it like a scab healing over a wound. He slammed into it, screaming, pounding, until the wall rippled and consumed him like a mouth. I dropped to my knees. I didn't know what I was praying to anymore. I thought of my wife. Of the way she used to kiss me before bed. I thought of music.
Of the sun. Of things uno might never see again.
And then I saw it, me, reflected in one of the twisted bone mirrors lining the altar. My eyes were black. My fingers longer than they should be. My skin moved, pulsed, asterisk alive. Asterisk my face, shifted when I wasn't looking. I could see the creature's mark branded into my chest, glowing faintly beneath the surface. I wasn't human anymore. And then the thing moved.
It slithered down the altar, unfolding like wet origami.
Every step it took made the ground crack and bleed. It came close, its shape writhing, always changing, always watching. It offered me its hand. I don't know why I took it. I should have run, fought, screamed, but I took it. And I saw.
He saw the beginning and the end of everything.
A universe not built from atoms, but from thought. A consciousness so vast, so ancient, that reality itself bent in its wake. It had created life not as an accident, but as an infection. We were always meant to return. To merge. We were always just fragments, scattered pieces seeking the whole. When I woke, I was outside the dig site. Alone. Covered in blood, caked in mud, my equipment broken. My voice was raw, my hands mangled.
The ole was gone. As if it never existed.
The world above hadn't noticed our absence.
No news crews. No search parties. Just silence.
I walked for days before finding help. I didn't speak. I couldn't, not because I was scared, but because I didn't remember how. Words had lost meaning down there. They admitted me into a hospital. My file says I was found near an abandoned mine. Malnourished. Delusional. They keep asking me where my team is. I tell them the truth. Asterisk, they're not gone.
They're deeper now. Asterisco. And every night, I dream of the shifting god. Of the black cavern.
Of the hand I took. Sometimes, I wake up mid-sentence. Speaking in a voice that's not mine. And last week, I noticed something.
The walls of my room.
They're beginning to pulse. Just faintly. But I know what it means. The hole never needed to stay open. It brought something back with me. And it's waiting to go deeper. Again.
Fade to black.